But so I was Nita's teacher 19 years ago, and I actually found Nita's comprehensive book. And it reminded me of when she was a student, very talented and hardworking student. But she was doing a hotel in a building on 4th and Alder, and at that time there was an off-track bedding place on the ground floor. And she went in and looked at and did as-built of that building, even though I was a little worried about that. So Nita graduated with a Bachelor of Interior Architecture, and since then she was at SRG Architects for 12 years and has been at Skylab for 7 years, the last 3 of which she's been director of design and a principal at Skylab. She is gonna show a whole collection of projects at Skylab, and I'm sure as director of interior design, she's been involved in a lot of those. And so I'm not going to go on and on about those projects because I don't know as much about it, but I do know that she's done a vast variety of work since she's graduated. Everything from residential to gigantic institutional buildings. So and I know that the grit and interesting design ideas that she got to her for the first project, or the last project in school, we'll see now. And I'm looking forward to seeing what she's showing us. And I also want to know what instrument she plays in the band at Skylab. So because I wrote that. So please join me in welcoming Nita Posada back to you about a couple of
Hi, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay? Great. I'm going to not use a mic, but shout if you need me to speak up. So thank you, Linda, for the introduction, and Michael. It's really great to be back here in room 115, 19 years later. Linda introduced me, but I wanted to share a little bit more about myself. So I grew up in Columbia, spent most of my life moving around a lot, and came from a family of builders, designers, and architects. It was somehow inevitable that I would end up in this profession. Grew up on construction sites with my dad, and when we were kids, my mom would turn everything, she had gone to architecture school and sort of turned everything into a really interesting model making exercise. And nothing seemed more interesting to me when I was 8 years old than the idea of staying up all night building models. And so therefore my passion for going to architecture school. My brother and sister also went to U of L. These 3 shining cotton candy addicted kids turned into U of L architecture grad. My brother was 2 years after me, Lucas, and then my sister in 2010. So I come from a family that's still really engaged. We're actually all working together now. All of our firms are collaborating on projects. So it's been really fun to take what we learned here and kind of translate it into our professional lives here at U of L. I've also had the opportunity in my career when I was with SRG to work on several really fun projects on campus. So kind of coming full circle back to my interior architecture and architecture education here, being able to work on early in my career, Lilith, and then my last couple of projects when I was at SRG, the Marcus Marietta Sports Performance Center and Dan Sanders Stadium, which were incredible to work on, incredible design projects, and a really fun opportunity to be able to just be back on campus and explore design here. So that was a little bit about me. Now transitioning to telling you some about Skylab. We were founded in 1999, so this is our 25th anniversary by Jeff Covell. Jeff was building homes in Miami and sort of built this passion for design. He went to architecture school at Cornell and found himself working on a design build project for Lenny Kravitz. This is the house that you see here on the right. It was his first design project, his first design build project, and it was published and got a lot of press and a lot of attention. From there, he decided to move to Portland and wanted to do something. At that point, I'll describe it how Jeff describes it, which is, of course, he thought he knew everything. He was 23 years old and had gone to architecture school, so why not start his own practice? So Jeff bought a lot and built this spec house on Montgomery Avenue in Portland, which is the image on the bottom left here. And that really kind of kicked off Skylab's practice in architecture in Portland. So we describe ourselves as architects, designers, and creators, entrepreneurs, making today what we believe will inspire and connect people tomorrow. Although our practice is mostly architects and interior designers, often we're collaborating with, or we have in-house landscape architects, brand designers, lighting designers, other people from related industries, because we really just want to have a studio of creative folks that are working together to do really good work. This is our studio in the shell of the building that we bought, which we'll talk a little bit more about. It does kind of read like a band photo. Linda asked would I play in the band, and so we like to not only work together but play together as well. So I'm the singer in the band. It's really an opportunity to do large scale karaoke with an audience because we only really play covers. But we have a lot of fun together as well. Our studio, and I don't call it an architecture firm, I call it a studio because we're all about exploration and we're all about bringing these core values to every project that we work on. Regeneration is one of our primary core values. For us, it's a kind of all-encompassing idea of sustainability that goes beyond the idea of classifications or a certain direction in sustainability, but is more grounded in leaving every place better than we found it. Along with that is the idea of narrative. So every project has concept DNA and unique stories, and we want to bring those to life with a strong point of view. This project before was a project that we did for the city of Portland. It's a wastewater treatment facility, and they initially thought they were going to essentially hardscape what was a wetland, and we were able to, in lieu of doing that, put green roofs on the project, revitalize the wetland, and make a place that people want to visit. And so one of the better City of Portland buildings is the wastewater treatment facility, which is a really interesting kind of approach to changing the narrative about all of the projects that we work on. There's also something that we talk about called strategy, which is our idea of challenging the status quo and doing it better. So this could be in building systems, construction methods. We have a proprietary modular home system that we developed as a solution to a residential project that Linda actually just mentioned a moment ago, and that we've started to roll out and use in a lot of remote and mountain environments. So for us, it's thinking about how can we do things differently and how can we institute the best strategy for every project. And then rolling all that together into delivering the unexpected. So we want to be unique, we want to be contextual, and we want to be extraordinary. This image is at Serena Williams building, which I'll also speak some more about. Often people think Skylab and think sharp corners, there's a lot of black. The first image that was kind of the cover page when everyone walked in was little vignettes of a lot of our projects. And when you start to really look at the variety of work that we've done and the different types of projects that we do, there's a lot of color and a lot of life. And that's about the context of the place and about designing spaces that are specific to who our client is at that time. I'm going to flip through this pretty quickly, but we do a lot of different types of work. And the reason I'm sharing all of this is to share the idea of, I suppose I should speak to the title of this talk as a living laboratory. So how do we do exploration? How are we doing creative innovation on all of our projects? And these are all of the different types of services that we have in all of these different sectors. So At Skylab, we're about problem solving, we're about innovation, and we're about creative solutions. We're not specifically tied or tethered to any one market sector. So we don't have the deep portfolio of, besides mountain projects, we have a lot of explorations and everything from commercial and institutional work to my latest project that I just finished that's not in here, which is the world's largest cruise ship. Never in a million years would I think that I would be working on that. But we took the project and it was really fun to do. So everything from master planning in mountain and city environments, commercial architecture, mass timber construction is something that we've been exploring a lot of that I'll also speak to. This is the modular home system on the bottom right. And then we also are doing a lot with mass ply, CLT. So any sort of kind of innovative strategies around timber construction. A lot of different market sectors, workspace, gathering spaces, food and beverage, fitness and wellness, brand and art integration. And almost every one of our projects has all of these different typologies within it, especially in the big picture of brand, kind of big brand development and master. So our practices and process and the way that we are able to be really exploratory in the work that we're doing is by going beyond the planning, architecture, and interior side of our practice. And we also have Skylab construction and Skylab development. Those things were born of specific projects that didn't have a developer or didn't have a contractor. And we said, well, how hard can it be? We'll do it. And so we created Skylab construction, and then we built a shop to build modules, and we started to kind of make that a really critical part of our 5 petals of practice. Our process is really focused on art and science and the intersection between them. So human experience, the stories that we're telling through art and science, the methods of inquiry that we use to tell these stories, and the intersection of all of these things is what creates that magic. So that centerpiece is the aesthetic beauty, it's the magic, it's the connection between place and form and the people that inhabit our projects. We bring all of those things to research and engagement, and this little loop-de-swoop at the bottom should really be 15 loop-de-swoops across the page, because there's iteration, there's research, there's engaging history of the place, there's engaging cultural context. All of that happens throughout our process while we march along the usual process of starting with synthesizing and experimenting on projects, all the way to design and documentation and building and evaluating. I was kind of laughing to myself as I was putting this together, because when I was here, I heard a lot, what does the building want to be? I heard it in this room 500 times and I never really got it. It was sort of like, Oregon, hippy dippy, what does the building want to be? What does that even mean? And now I'm like, oh, I get it. It's about extracting from the place, extracting from the people, from the program, from the technologies, from the environment, all of the things that then help you emerge with what ends up being the final solution. So 19 years later, I finally got it. What does the building want to be? So I want to share a few different projects that are just examples. And what I'm going to do is go back in time. So I'll start with telling you a little bit about what 2023 held for us. So even though this year is our 25th anniversary, last year was a huge monumental year in the history of Skylab. We undertook 2 major projects, not just one of which was our headquarters, and which will be our now hopefully forever home, and the other which was creating our first monograph called The Nature of Buildings. Our studio was built to integrate all of the things that inspire us as designers, that inspire us as humans, that inspire us to connect to one another. So we built spaces for, I had a clicker up here. We built spaces for typical work things. So this is the before photo on the bottom right. The new studio has typical work things like meeting spaces and desks, but beyond that, we have a full kitchen where we can cook together. We have here it is. We have a full kitchen where we can cook together. We have outdoor space. We have places where we can do yoga, where we can garden. We have a 3,000 square foot shop where we can build things and test things. We have an art gallery who's our tenant, greenhouse space. We're talking about putting in a modular sauna and above ground pool just so we can play a little bit. So really the integration of the outdoor space and the shop brought together all of the things that were really important to us, as well as explorations and things like prototyping these modular CLT conference rooms that could be used in our space, could be potentially moved, could be rolled out for future clients, could be there's this size and then there's another larger one. So we're really using our studio as a living laboratory. Every time you go in there, it looks different. Things are moved around. We're 3D printing in the space. We're building things. And we're really excited about doing all of those things together. We bought this building in 2020. And so it was sort of a challenging, process of several years to build it out. But at the end of the day, we have this kind of beautiful indoor garden studio space that's messy and functional and exciting. And I invite everyone to come visit us because it's a really, really great place to be. I should add to that, it's really changed the way that we work. We were in another space for a very long time. Post-COVID, a lot of people had sort of struggled to come back into the studio space. Most people now want to be here 5 days a week because they can hang out in the kitchen, they can work outside. You can have a lot of the ways of working that you do at home. So it's made a big difference in people's engagement in the space. So we also created The Nature of Buildings, which is our book that came out last year. It was certainly a labor of love that started in 2018 and was also an experiment for us. So we've had kind of graphic standards. We've had a pretty good kind of rigidity of our visual communication and how we share our stories. And this was an exploration of how can we do that differently and how can we begin to tell different stories. We were really inspired by sort of the albums and album covers and the experience of buying an album, back in the day where you would learn about an artist by reading the inside cover, by reading the inspiration of how they got to write their lyrics, by reading the lyrics and having the full story that goes along with the vinyl that you were listening to. So that kind of started our exploration and how do we make something that is a nod to that, because music is also a really big part of our culture. So we started we worked with a couple of different publishers, some in-house designers, some graphic designers, and did years and years of exploration of what this could be. So these are just some diagrams that those groups put together for us. This is an image of the final book. It has kind of a fold out cover of that kaleidoscope that was on the front image. To share sort of the color behind Skylab, and then it's divided into several sections: regeneration, narrative, and strategy, and the projects that tell the stories of each of those things. This is just an example of kind of an exploration and just the visuals of the book. And we really liked the idea that it was a tactile object that you would flip through, that you had to turn, that you have to open things, that within that book, there was also not just kind of your standard turning the pages, but also the potential to have some posters, kind of the equivalent of concert posters that open up and reveal these interludes of projects that maybe weren't, that were significant in our history, but didn't need to take 15 pages of the book. We were also able to engage collaborators and others that we work with often. Mauricio Villarreal from Play Studio, John Hoke, who's a client of ours. You might know his home as the Twilight House. It is now for us the Lego House. So really exciting. They're turning the Twilight House into one of our architectural Lego sets. And then Randy Gregg, who some of you may know as an architecture critic and a big supporter of Skylab over the years. So these essays were meant to be conversations that drew out some of the project stories beyond how we might tell them, but we also allowed others to tell our stories in the book as well, because that was really important for us. So going back in time, the biggest project that Skylab has ever executed is the Serena Williams building at Nike headquarters. This building is 1 million square feet. We've never done anything even close to that. And it is the design center and the headquarters for design for all of Nike global design. 2,500 seats. The idea was to bring everyone from the disparate locations of design into one building on campus, on the new North Campus. For this project, we wanted to look at what is the definition of the new Nike campus, and also how do we take inspiration from the namesake of the building. So on Nike campus, every building has a namesake, and traditionally on the South Campus, there were maybe some graphics, maybe the building was named Tiger Woods, but there wasn't that much of the identity of the athlete in the building. And on the North Campus, ZGF, Olsen Kundig, Skylab were challenged to turn that on its head and make the LeBron building really about how do you embody that athlete, the Serena Williams about how do you embody that athlete, and then how do you embody the things that are also specific to the client. For Nike specifically, heritage and innovation, and then the idea of the player and the team, macro scale and micro scale. How do you look at the big picture of the place and then how people engage with it individually? And then Serena, as we were so lucky to have her be our namesake for the building, because she allowed us the opportunity to embrace the very different sides of her, one which is that her warrior strength, and then the softness of the muse and the experience that is Serena as a human versus Serena as an athlete. So we looked at all of these things together, built the DNA of the project, and started thinking about how we might engage the site. One of the things that was really critical to us was to look at different inspirations for the diagram. We ended up landing on the wing and liked the way that it represents a lot of different things. The way water moves on site. It allowed us to do some things architecturally that I'll talk about. And then also just a natural element that speaks to abstractly the goddess Nike. So coming back to the owner and the client. So this is just a final rendering of that campus as a whole. You can see CGF's, Olsen Kundig's, SRG, Skylab's building all together as a new North Campus, and how pretty different it is from the South Campus that was built in the 90s. So in this building, we were looking at, we were tasked with a lot of different things. So it's an office space, it's a lot of different food and beverage venues, and it's also their merchandising center. So for the first time in Nike history, a product can go from drawing to full retail mock-up in one building, as opposed to going back and forth all over the world. So the carbon footprint and the ability to innovate and connect was really important to us to say, how do you not only do that within one building, but how do you do it in a way that feels really connected and feels really integrated? And I'm kind of moving through some of these things quickly, but in a way that people can really see each other and learn from each other. So you don't have football designing over here and golf over here, and those things aren't speaking to one another. The brand integration was really important for us here, and our consultant teams, Place Landscape, our structural engineers, we did some pretty incredible feats. I think on this project, in particular, structure and brand were two of the biggest areas where we were able to innovate and integrate. So this bridge is seismically isolated between the two buildings. So in the case of a seismic incident, it can kind of shift and move around, and is a really interesting kind of structural element. Although it's a connector between the two buildings, it also serves a lot of structural function here. Sustainability was really important. This site was previously all of the surface lots for Nike. Now we have parking underneath. The last thing that we wanted to do was take surface lots and put up buildings and say, call it a day. So we said, what if we create in this wing form green roofs and spaces in between the slots so that you have green space everywhere, and so that you have the ability for water runoff and stormwater to connect back to the wetland, which the campus had turned its back on for many years. And now we're celebrating and elevating that and creating a connection between, you can see what we call the Shoe Dog Bridge on the left-hand side, a connection between the Tiger Woods building on the old campus and the Serena building on the new campus. And this whole area in front of that wetland is now cafeteria space. It's now open office space and places where people can actually work and engage with the outdoors in a way that was fairly new for the campus. So these are just some initial sketches of that landscape plan and sort of the integration with that wetland. This is just one example, but each slot between buildings also had separate ecological systems so that you could have the very different experiences if you were outside on a roof deck or in a plaza between buildings. We also liked the idea that you get some pretty stunning sunsets here, and these are some of the tallest buildings in Beaverton. And so we wanted the building to reflect that and to be at times have stature in the place, but also at times just reflect the environment around it. This is an example of a roof deck that's 6 stories up, and it feels like you're in a parkscape because you don't see any of the buildings beyond. All you see is the hills beyond. These are some images just to share brand integration again, the connection of natural light and daylighting. All of the studios were connected by these stair cores so that the elevators are really pretty hidden. So people are moving throughout the space in a way that's really connected. And then the integration of art here was really important. This was a piece by Jenny Sabin. And this was structurally engineered 5 years before it was installed. So the integration of interior design, architecture, structure, art, all of those things was such a critical piece of making this project work. And it was Skylab team, consultants, contractor, and the Nike team really helping to bring all of this together. All of the food and beverage venues were after Serena, named after one of the open tournaments. And so we have Australian Open, French Open, US Open. So there were some really great opportunities also to nod back to her history and her wins and everything that she had engaged in. And also making sure that we were connecting not only to internal heritage, internal work, everything that was happening within the building, but always back to the landscape, to Ronaldo Field, to the history of Nike and the heritage that was the old campus as well. This is a tennis court and a tree that we were able to save, this reflecting pool. This is the Serena tennis court, and we went and played there Skylab retreat a couple of years ago and learned that one of our partners, Brent, is a tennis pro. And so we had Brent on one side and like 15 of us on the other side, and he still beat us. It was 100 degrees. And so someday there will be a rematch. So if there's any tennis pros here, please come get a job at Skylab. So this is that Shoe Dog Bridge as some of that landscape starts to grow in, and you can start to feel that connection between the design of the place, but also being really connected to the natural environment. Some of these are interesting just to share our process. We do a lot in 3 dimensions. These renderings almost became our CA set. I'd say that's sort of in jest, but we spent a lot of time during construction administration with the detail contractor teams saying, what is this supposed to look like? We've never done this before. And we heard that almost every single OAC, every single contractor meeting, every week for 5 years. We've never done this before. How do we do this? So the 5 years of construction of this project, or it felt like 5 years of construction of this project, were just spent problem solving to go from rendering to the reality of what these spaces are as they're built out. So prototyping, lots of iterations, lots of design explorations into what ultimately became a really cool project and kind of a landmark project on Nike's campus. So back in time, again, yard building was another first for Skylab. It was the first high-rise that we did. It was also one of our first projects where we were also co-developers on the project. So we had equity in the building, and we're able to be integrated into the ownership team in that way as well. This project is really interesting because it's on the industrial part of Portland. There's not much there besides warehouses and industry. The Burnside Skate Park is directly adjacent to the building. And initially they wanted to build this little square of a building on that site. We wanted to take inspiration from both sort of the grittiness of that existing location, but also go back in time. It's not just about the place as it is now, it's about the place as it was before humans ever touched it. So what was the untouched riverbank? What was the Willamette River before humans were there? What did this natural environment feel like? So we started to explore some form making. We started to explore relationships between Burnside Street and the Burnside Bridge and the river. What could the tower do? What was maximizing views? What was maximizing solar exposure and connections between the different levels that needed to connect to the building? There was also so that obviously, you'll see in images, drove a lot of this building was the regeneration of the site and how to make this a place that people wanted to engage and experience the city in a way that they couldn't any other way. There's also this huge stormwater pipe that cut through the site and started to create a really interesting diagram for the building and say, in order to work around it, we kind of have to put structure here. Therefore, it's making this interesting shape. And when people ask why the bow tie, like where does that even, where did that come from? It all has to do with the utilities that run under the building and not disturbing those, because it would have been just cost prohibitive to do that. And so the building here, although you don't see it, was really informed by the context of the place. So we're really proud of what this building has done in this area. The gardens are thrive sort of year round. They kind of change over time. They have pollinators are there. When you move through the building, you get to experience the gardens. You see them from the Burnside Bridge, and it's been a really great catalyst for change in that neighborhood and a catalyst for kind of building other things and other residential properties in the area. Also within this building is a spa concept that we created called Not Springs. And this is sort of a modern social club, but it has the ideas of a Nordic bathing ritual. So you have medium temperature pools, hot tubs, cold plunges. You have a deck that you can see here on the left-hand side that overlooks the river and has incredible sunsets. There's also a gym, a member lounge, a co-working space. But the idea that you could have regeneration, not only in the building, but human regeneration within the space, and really bring that into the city center. So this is one of our favorite project images. If you looked at this, it feels like a parkscape. It feels really green, but you're literally in the heart of Portland, in the intersection of the city. We also like to show this image. This was in July of 2020. So when the Portland was the center of a lot of BLM protests and activism, this photo was taken, and we're really proud to sort of be a backdrop for that, even though it's not directly created for our building. It's really important for us to show images about the context of the place, not just before we get there, but after we've sort of left our mark. In relationship to the yard, there's also another building on a site that originally was not going to be anything in particular because it's such a complicated site. This is a couplet that funnels a lot of traffic over to the Burnside Bridge. And so it's a challenging site because you don't have parking or accessing it from really interesting street levels. And we said, what if we do a sister building to the yard? We called it the side yard. And we started to integrate some interesting strategies, different strategies. So on this one, the idea was that time was of the essence. We had to move quickly. And so we did a CLT structure on this building and had a really quick construction process. We're able to kind of put this building up and have these really two interesting projects next door to each other. Also across the street from another interesting project, the dumbbells. So these three have created what was going to be essentially just basically stormwater planters turned into these really interesting build projects. So the last project that I will touch on is, I think, one of my favorite projects at Skylab, even though it is a small project. This was some work that we did for Sandy Bodecker. Sandy was one of the founders of Nike skateboarding and a designer at Nike for a long time. He was very involved in Arts for Youth. He was very passionate about art and music and bringing that to the community. Sandy was sick for a long time. He knew that he was not going to be in this world for a long time, and he wanted to really leave a legacy and build his passion project while he was still here. So he was a really incredible client, sort of the dream client that really let us do a lot of exploration and encouraged us to innovate and encouraged us to be interesting, to do things differently, and to just play. So this project, even though formally is called the Bodecker Foundation, because that's what it is now, it's a kids' art foundation. When Sandy died, he left it, his family created a foundation, and now it's a kids' art organization. The working names for this project were Playpen and Sinbin. And the idea for both was just challenge what we could do here, do more, be more interesting, be different. The site for this project was an old chocolate factory. Had this really interesting waffle slab on the facade. And even though we knew that the combination of the chocolate factory on the right-hand side and this other small warehouse building on the left-hand side we could have torn it down and done something there, but we said, let's utilize these structures, but do something that feels very different than what's there now. Let's bring this into the space, into the courtyards. And again, take inspiration from Sandy's passions. So skating, kind of the old days of sitting around the fire, shooting the shit, playing music together, growing things inside, rock and roll and making music. So his program was artist studios, apartments for him to live in. There's a skate bowl. There's a world-class recording studio. The Decemberists have recorded all their latest albums there. A lot of people come to Portland just to record there. And so he wanted to do the coolest things, and he wanted to do it in the best way possible. So we had some pretty incredible consultants. This is supposed to be a video, and it's not coming up. That's okay. So also in the ideas of regeneration, looking at how do we bring stormwater and planted zones from the roof of the building into different green spaces within the space. So bottom up, top down, there's outdoor spaces that are connected to from almost every place within the buildings, and in how they're connected to one another, so that even though you're in the heart of Northwest Portland in a dense residential area, you still feel like you have a reprieve from the density of the city, and you have your own private outdoor space. This is the diagram or the aerial view of that building. There's a slide on top. There's a little campground on the roof of the building. There's a miniature golf course on the bottom. There's lots of places to kind of hang out and engage with the natural environment. There's also creative a makerspace in the space. This is a photo of Sandy's dad, who was an illustrator, children's book illustrator. So we found some of these books. Sandy had this collection of books, and we were able to extract some of the imagery and create custom wallpaper and custom upholsteries within the space. And so they don't specifically, there's no plaque that says what they are, but if you know Sandy, if you know the stories, you kind of know where they came from. This door here is also a public bathroom or the kind of powder room for the building, but it's also a world-class recording booth. So people do podcasts in there. They record from the studio, which is just around the corner in that space. I think they even have, well, I think they have a running podcast that they do in there. So it has history, legacy, and art kind of all integrated into one. Also, Sandy has and had an incredible art collection, so we wanted to make sure that that was integrated as well. And he was a very colorful individual. His interests were very colorful, so we wanted to make sure that that was also showcased in the place. It ended up being, so you can see in this image that waffle slab, which was the original facade of the chocolate factory, is now one edge of that inner courtyard within the building. And then this is the skate bowl inside and the recording studio. And now this space is open. On Wednesday nights, they do free skate. So those garage doors are rolled up and people are here exploring in the space. I think this is my favorite Skylab project because it is such a great example of all of the different things that, given the opportunity for innovation and exploration and trying new things, we're able to accomplish. This is the project that created Skylab Construction. It was going to be cost prohibitive to do it. And so that's where we said, oh, it's fine. Sure, we can do it. And so we designed this space, we built the space, and really learned a lot. So we're really thankful for the opportunity to work with people that are willing to give us that space. And one of the things we say often is that we reveal the unseen for those willing to seek it. So for us, it's about just having great collaborators, or sometimes we call them clients, but often it's collaborators and people that want to do great work with us. Thanks. Questions?
I wanted to ask, well, it's ironic that you brought up the Bogak Foundation as your last favorite project. I would say it's one of my favorite too. I actually got to visit it last summer during my internships, and it's one of my main festivals from my comprehensive project. And I was gonna ask, what was your favorite part? And you kind of already answered, so I think it was another good question. I guess with me learning more about Sandy's background and how it was created together, and I can even do I don't want to catch anyway. So what was the first? I guess like what came first when discussing with him, was like the skate park and the slide to the small mixed medium co-working spaces on the first and second level. Like ultimately, when having conversations with Sandy, what did you guys prioritize with him? Wanted a little bit of everything for the community.
I think the priority was figuring out how to do it all, which is sort of counterintuitive, but that's really what it was for him. He wanted to showcase all of these things, but not do it in a way that was haphazard and felt, too jammed into a place that didn't make sense. And so the priority was exploring the relationship and the connections between those things so that it felt very artfully executed and purposeful. I think one thing that I didn't say, which was something that was really important for us to integrate, was that Sandy's kind of full of surprises. And I love that every time I go to the building, I turn around, I'm like, oh, wait, you can see through this little slot and you see the old truss, which you can only see when you're sitting at this desk. Yeah, right. So you're sitting at this desk and you get to look over and see a portion of the building that you don't see from anywhere else. And so, the priority for Sandy was just, allowing those little surprises, things to emerge in that process of discovery over time as well. Great question.
What was there kind of learning that you had and what we had?
So this video, which has been showing up, so this video kind of shows you, it basically takes apart the whole building. So maybe afterwards I can pause this and see if I can just have it scrolling on the screen. But really it's sort of this is still there. It's these edges of the building. There's some really interesting, beautiful wooden trusses within the space that you can see. They kind of start to peek out here. They can definitely be seen within the skate bowl space. And so the more time you're there, the more you start to see all those kind of historical elements. So this space was mostly kept intact, and then the basically front wall, the adjacent space.
Going off of that, how did you-
I think it kind of also emerged over time. It was looking programmatically at what was working. And I know that some of them were just interesting design elements. So we wanted to expose the history of the place and not just tear it down. And if we were going to do that, if we were going to reuse the building, we didn't want to hide it. Definitely the bow trusses, definitely that waffle slab on the front. And then some other parts and pieces just kind of happened organically. Other questions? Sure. Yeah.
So in interior, we need to do site analysis, and different, and if we have a data site, and then.
Mhm.
Can you talk a little bit about, projects that maybe like escalator, project? I was curious with this one, but also maybe for some other ones that, you know, really like that. Is, what comes first? Are you looking for a site that, as it was the site was defined, you know, here that the site you can keep these buildings are on,
Mhm.
or review, consulting with the client, let's find the site with review
Mhm.
quality.
Yeah.
And maybe use some of the other things.
That's a great question. In this instance, I believe Sandy already had the site. There were a couple of different options. So sometimes we inherit the site and we are just looking for what to utilize and what to kind of extract from it. But often a client comes to us and says, I have an idea and I generally want it to be here. Can we explore these different places? And then we'll start to do feasibility about what's special about each of those places and what starts to integrate their essentially mission statement of what they want to accomplish with their project. And then sometimes we get a site and they say, I want to do something cool. I have no idea what that is. Can you test 55 different ideas? And we spend time testing. Is it a hotel? Is it a residence? Is it multifamily? Is it a campground? All sorts of different things.
So can you talk a little bit about, does that tie in with the developer plan? You were saying that Skylab was almost a developer plan.
We co-develop on some projects, not all projects. So in some instances where it makes sense, we either have a financial stake in fee equity, or if we really want to see a project happen, we'll bring it to a development group and look at how to build it. So it does tie in that we're looking at the big picture of not only how do you design something in place, but also how do you look at it from the lens of an owner, from the lens of a pro forma, what's going to be a financially viable project long-term beyond when we hand the drawings over to a contractor, but really what's the life of the project. So it's life cycle analysis, site to, and so that it gets sold or something else gets built.
It's more of a personal question. I was
Sure.
asking. All that different parts of our career,
Mhm.
as emerging designers, what would be your advice for all of us, especially as the, I mean, you've kind of gotten glimpses of the drastic change.
Mhm.
With technology, and et cetera, like, I guess that would be the journalists, obviously, we do connect with you about, so.
Yeah.
I like it.
I think kind of big general advice as you're going into your job search is start doing your research on firms. If you can go to events, if you can visit, a lot of people do design week, open houses. A lot of people are building their new offices. Find out when they're doing their open houses, show up to the parties. I just invited you all to come, take me up on it. Like stop by the office, really do your research. Firms are so different. Every company is so different. And you're going to learn totally different areas of practice. You're going to develop as a designer, as a technical designer, as a storyteller, as a leader, as a project manager. All of the things that go into this industry are handled very different in each practice. So when you're going into the job force, interview them as much as they're interviewing you, because finding a good fit is as important for the company as it is for you. So ask a ton of questions, and people are happy to, even if you want to do informational interviews or visit the office, I would say kind of do that, but also go into it with an open mind. Like Linda held up my thesis, and I thought I only wanted to do hospitality. And when I was offered a job at SRG by Kent Duffy, who I met through the School of Architecture, in one of my reviews, they said, you're going to be working on pediatric healthcare. And I was like, snooze fast. I don't want to do that. It sounds terrible. I learned so much. I learned how to be a really good technical designer. I learned how to do drawing sets. I learned the rigor of our industry, so that by the time I got to Skylab, I could just go wild and do all the other things because I'd learned all of that. So go into it with an open mind and also do your research. The art.
And you mentioned that the design came from not being able to the living that was happening
Mhm.
that happened. You want to design that out things or that
That was pretty early on in the design phase. So we knew that was happening. I'm just looking for these diagrams. As we were starting to look at how to site the project, that was in mind. And so we were able to kind of take this information, take the geotech report, and kind of combine that with these explorations on form and come to a solution. So we're pretty lucky here.
give us projects. You can also do
Yeah, they're all of our planted areas are intended to be kind of multi-functioning ecosystems. So we don't want to plant for the sake of planting and irrigating, because that sort of defeats the purpose. So they all have for most of our projects, and I can pull up even as we're doing our master planning work, we're really inspired by the water table and what's happening on the site. Like this is an example of a master planning project that we did in Des Moines, Washington, where they wanted to do a waterfront redevelopment. And the diagram for this project is all about what's happening with the stormwater and the water table and how the water is running off from the main city to down back to the sound, and kind of that connection between the environment and developed environment. We do. It's really a collaboration with our consultants. So we have really great landscape architects and civil engineers that we work with often. So one of the reasons I really love practicing at Skylab is because there's very soft lines between architecture, interior design, landscape, brand, and I've never felt siloed as an interior designer. A lot of my projects are planning projects or hospitality resort master plans, or kind of big scale indoor outdoor spaces. So our consultants are very much a part of our team.
Sort of a follow up on that. I'm really impressed with the landscape integration on the project, but if I'm checking that, we don't have landscape architects in the first, right?
Right.
Which seems interesting. Why is that?
So the landscape architects that we have chosen to work with a lot, you know, we'll work with new companies, but the folks that we work with a lot, and this goes for all of our consultants, we don't want to do a set of drawings and hand them off and say, here, now draw this, or here's your rectangle or triangle of land, figure out what to do with it. We have design meetings, so we don't even, you know, we have coordination meetings, but they're at the table, and often they're impacting and supporting the design of the building form and the connections to the outside, as we are also collaborating on the design of the landscape space. And so those conversations happen really early on, and our landscape architects, like, place is just part of our design meetings. And so we don't draw a line and say, you get to talk about this and you get to talk about this and stay in your lane. We're just all about kind of creativity and good ideas. And so it leads to these sort of very integrated environments that feel connected between architecture, interiors, and landscape. They're amazing. I mean, the landscape architects that we work with at Place and Not Studio and Tuning, like, really fun to work with. Yeah.
It seems like you have a very intense programming.
Mhm. We do.
And also, the facility is very much like, so in rough areas, the older, the structures work together. We talk about it.
Within, like, our consultants or internally? I would say it's fully integrated from the beginning. I mean, we do programming alongside, like, when we do planning projects, our landscape architects are often, our MEP are often engaged. We have really great engineers that are part of those conversations, and they just help build the story. They understand the site and the place in very different ways. And so we like to involve people because everyone's going to come with the experience in their field and just be able to elevate the project start to finish. So we try as early on as even concept phases before we get into schematic design to integrate consultants.
Do you have more questions? Thank you.
Okay, great.
Lisa, thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.